welcome in. It's the Breer Report for September the 18th. It is a mailbag edition of the Breer Report. We, as always, have a print edition of the mailbag on the mmqb.com. More answers to more questions, more detail. You can find it all there on the mmqb.com. But as always, we'll answer 3 of your questions right here, right now. My first question is from Jeff Butera. That's at Bay News 9. Jeff, looks like you're in the business, Jeff, based on your headshot. Jeff asks, what is the biggest reason for the Dolphins' struggles? 1, roster construction. 2, McDaniel, lack of accountability, culture. 3, unfortunate injuries. 4, Tua, concussions, and quarterback play. I think the reason for the Dolphins' struggles right now is the natural point that they're at as an organization. And we've talked about this being the natural reset for the team, and that is where they are. I'm not sure that under any circumstance that they would have come out of the first 2 games 2-0 based on some of the things they did in the offseason to change over the roster. And by the way, I think they were right to reset the roster this offseason. But there are bigger picture questions, and there are questions coming out of week 1 and week 2, the no-show in week 1, some of the discipline issues down the stretch in week 2 that lead to the bigger picture questions about coaching and the front office. And so we can dive into those by diving into, begin with the players only meeting that was held last week. What was said in that meeting? Well, what was said in that meeting was that there was the captains addressing their teammates and basically preaching a message of accountability. And that message of accountability wasn't about being accountable to the organization. It was about being accountable to each other and being accountable to themselves. And this can be one of those things where at the end for a coach, sometimes the players will say these sorts of things. We need to do what's best for ourselves right now. And the real thing that the captains were trying to get across to their teammates here was the NFL will not judge you based on your circumstances. The NFL will not judge you based on your coaching. The NFL will look at the tape and evaluate you, and to some degree evaluate you in a vacuum, almost regardless of what's going on around you. And so you owe it to yourselves and you owe it to your teammates to put the best product you can out there. As such, the effort was better in week 2 than week 1. I think anybody with eyes could see that. They played much better against the Patriots than they did against the Colts. That said, there were still a lot of the discipline issues. There was the penalties. A lot of those things cost the Dolphins down the stretch. They have the punt return touchdown that puts them ahead. Then they give up a kick return touchdown. They have turnovers down the stretch. They give up sacks down the stretch. So I think the question now becomes, what does this look like coming out of here? And the problem that Mike McDaniel has now is, I think, twofold. Number one, the narrative has been out there on this team for 4 or 5 months now. And where is this team at culturally? There was a feeling over the last couple of years that some of the star players, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, were able to do whatever they wanted. There were issues with guys on defense at the end under Vic Fangio, freelancing. We've seen some of those issues metastasize onto offense, where you've seen some freelancing on offense as well. And so the question then becomes, of course, what sort of hold do the coaches have on the team? And where is the team now going forward? Well, they did try to reset some things culturally and changing over some things in the roster. They did trade away Ramsey. They did emphasize culture and personality and character and the guys that they brought in this offseason, but that hasn't looked great through 2 weeks, of course. Then there's the second piece of it, which is if you are in this natural reset, if you are in this natural point where you're retooling the organization a little bit, the owner is going to ask a lot of big picture questions. Is this the general manager I want leading the rebuild? Is this the coach I want leading the rebuild? Or is there somebody in the organization that I see that could be the coach that maybe I want to put in place to get a look at him? And that could be Anthony Weaver for the Dolphins. So there are a lot of big picture questions that the Dolphins have to answer that Stephen Ross is going to ask of himself over the coming months. Now, if it doesn't look right tonight, could there be changes coming out of this game? I'm not sure I see that, but those big picture questions are fair to ask now based on where the Dolphins are. I love Mike McDaniel as an offensive coach. I think he's a really good guy. He did a really good job over his first few years there. And I do think if he did wind up being fired in Miami, he'd probably eventually get a second shot somewhere else. But He's certainly at a critical point. The Dolphins are certainly at a critical point, and how they play against the Bills tonight will be really, really interesting. Question number 2, this is from Michael. That's at mycon0224. Question is, the hysteria surrounding CJ Stroud during his rookie season has now turned to crickets regarding his significant regression, completion percentage, interceptions in 24 and now this season. What's the assessment of Stroud's performance in NFL circles? I think the assessment is that in 2024, he didn't have the same confidence in everything around him that he had as a rookie. And there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, when he was a rookie, he was coming in with a first-year offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick. The NFL didn't have a book on Slowick yet. They had a veteran offensive line that was playing well together. They had a healthy receiver group. There were a lot of things for the Texans that were right in 2023. Going to 2024, the culture in the offensive line crumbles. It becomes toxic in that offensive line room. The receiver room has injuries. So your top 3 receivers all dealt with significant injuries. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs. And then the scheme, Bobby Slowick's scheme, the NFL caught up to some of the things they were doing, and there was a feeling that the Texans didn't adjust to some of the things that defenses were throwing at them. On top of that, you had CJ Stroud himself, who was used to having a lot of control when he was the quarterback at Ohio State, not having as much control. Now, part of that is the structure of that offense. It puts more in the center to make protection adjustments. There are more things coming on from the sideline. There's the CAN system, which means the quarterback is looking for a coverage indicator. He's got 2 plays, and that coverage indicator tells him whether to go with the play as called or to can the play to the second call. CJ Stroud was used to having a little bit more control to adjust and change things. And as he looked out there at the defense and he saw things that weren't quite right or that they were running into a bad look, he didn't feel like he had enough power to change things. So they bring in a new offensive coordinator and Nick Caley from New England, from a system in the New England system that gives the quarterback a lot of power. Caley spent the last 2 years with the Rams after coming up in New England. So he does have background in the system that CJ ran his first 2 years. And the thought was, okay, we're going to empower CJ Stroud. We're going to give him more control at the line of scrimmage. But that is a process. Fixing the offensive line, that is a process. Overhauling the receiver group, that is a process. The Texans right now have 2 rookie receivers that are playing, Jaden Hickens and Jalen Noel. They have a rookie at left tackle in Ariante Ursary. They have a rookie offensive coordinator, again, in Caley. Give it some time. I'm not saying that this is going to be the greatest show on turf by week 8 or week 9, but I do think that we need to give this a little bit of time. And again, the assessment in league circles on CJ Stroud is that last year it looked like he didn't trust things quite as much. Let's let him get back to a point where he can trust what's around him a little bit more. They've got maybe the best defense in the league. I think this is a team that could look really, really good 6 or 7 weeks from now, but you got to give it a little time. And I understand everybody's got shows to do and everybody's got columns to write and everybody now has, for the first time in months, things to react to. But I think this is one situation where a little patience could lead you down a road where you see a team that maybe be ready to challenge the upper echelon in the AFC after making the playoffs the last couple of years. And I mean, it's not like it was a complete mess last year. They were in the divisional round, and they were right there neck and neck with the Chiefs in the fourth quarter at Arrowhead in that divisional round. Finally, question number 3 from IDK. That's at fell out. Why didn't Jesse Minter get a head coaching interview this past offseason, and how can the Chargers continue to keep him a secret? I did some research on this over the course of the last couple of days, and I think this is an interesting point to make. So over the last 4 coaching cycles, there have been only 3 hires of first-time defensive-minded head coaches who weren't ex-players. 3 in 4 cycles. That's the category that Jesse Minter's in, right? So that's Matt Eberflus in Chicago. That's Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. That's Mike McDonald in Seattle. So it's harder for guys with Jesse Minter's profile to get shots as head coaches. That's natural. That's just the way the league has gone. But I do think there's one name there that can really help Jesse Minter, who's very, very highly thought of on Jim Harbaugh's staff, very, very highly thought of in league circles. A lot of the front office people who watched Michigan's defense in 2022 and 23 that were scouting their players were impressed with what they saw. Mike McDonald's the key. Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter were together on the defensive staff in Baltimore for 4 years. Jesse Minter followed Mike McDonald at Michigan, and has a very similar profile to Mike Macdonald. Macdonald won 10 games in Seattle in year one, and that team looks like it's going to be pretty good this year. So if Mike Macdonald has a playoff team in year two, and you're talking about maybe getting to double-digit wins for the second straight year in Seattle, now I think teams are going to look at like Mike Macdonald. Well, what's the next version of that? And it's Jesse Minter. So I think Jesse Minter is very, very capable. It's just going to take an owner thinking outside the box and what could put Jesse Minter inside the box a little bit more, so to speak, and allow for owners to wrap their arms around the idea of hiring a guy like him. Is Mike Macdonald having a little bit more success in Seattle? Appreciate you guys coming out. As always, your feedback is welcome. You can comment right below here on YouTube if you want. We always love taking your comments. We take all that stuff into account. You can also get to me on social media if you want to go one-on-one with me at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert_Breer on Instagram, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook. Appreciate you guys coming out. We will see you with another Breer Report on Friday.